Morning, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston, and I'm here for another installment of Julie's PR Patter. When a leader spreads positivity, like our next guest, they impact everyone around them, and that acts as a retention tool and a magnet for talent. I'm so fortunate to know and have worked with Meg Newhouse. She's co-founder and CEO of Inspirant Group, the disruptive management consulting firm based in Chicago. A remote first company, Inspirant has been recognized for its people, for its people first culture by Built In and employee certified as a great place to work. She's a member of the Forbes Business Council, where she often writes about company culture. And Meg Newhouse was recently named a notable Gen X leader in consulting by Crane Chicago. So welcome, Meg.
Julie, I was not ready for that this morning. Thank you for that wonderful intro. And thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me on your patter. I've been waiting and so excited. We finally made it work. And
I know. I'm thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is so unique about Inspirant Group is not only your people first culture, but we're kind of in a new era about mental health in the workplace. And so, it used to be when I was coming up in the workplace that you would never talk about your mental health. If you had a therapy appointment, for example, or were having trouble, you would do anything and everything to hide it so that you would not be seen as somebody who's weak or overly sensitive or somebody who couldn't handle the daily demands of work. Am I right?
100%. Even I think as recently as, less than a decade ago, this was the mentality around it. But it's changing.
But things are changing, and I am so glad about that. And so how do you fold a focus on mental health into your culture so that it's not such a taboo subject? And what are some things that leaders and companies could do now to kind of bring mental health into the fold in the right way?
Again, thank you again for having me on, especially to talk about this, because you know how passionate I am about this. I think it just starts with a shift in a mindset, Julie. As with anything, you have to think about things differently. And I think that is really what successful leaders do these days anyway. An evolved leader has to have a growth mindset, has to be ready for change as it comes, because that's the era that we're living in, is constant change. So to shift your mindset around the stigma of talking about mental health really just is thinking about mental health is health. It's part of your health. If your mental health isn't good, you're going to be unable to do your job as well as you possibly could. You're not going to be physically well. There is a link between your mental health and your physical health. So really it's just thinking about the whole health of your people. And leaders who say they are people first and are genuinely people first are going to act on that. They're going to care about their whole people. So when somebody says, I need to take time off, if someone were to come to a leader and say, I need time off because I have COVID or I have pneumonia, or, I had a recent diagnosis of XYZ, leaders wouldn't think twice about it. Yes, of course you need time off to rest and recover and get better. Why couldn't you say the same that, I'm suffering from depression. I'm having an anxiety attack. I need to take some time off to get my mental health right. I think that's health. You need to do both of those things to be able to function fully, and leaders need to be aware of that.
Can you talk a little bit about your company core values and then these annual pillars, these cornerstones that you introduce? Because I think that's another way to sort of blend it into the culture in a very natural way from year to year, and to really get people thinking about it. And how do leaders do that? Like, how do you make it sort of a seamless kind of a thing?
It becomes part of the vernacular. It's the language. So for Inspirant Group, we're almost 6 years old. Can you believe that? Our 6-year anniversary is at the end of this month. And very early on in our formation, myself and my two co-founders realized that we needed to establish a set of core values, because that's just, to me, that's the soul of the company. That creates this common language from which we work. It describes how to be an unconsultant, which is what we call our team. It sets up the set of behaviors that are expected in how you act as a member of Inspirant Group. So we have 3 core values. We set them out very early on in the formation of our company, and we talk about them often. We talk
Well,
about
that's a difference right there, because in my experience, very often the core values are a poster on the kitchen wall.
yeah.
Maybe people mention it once a year or not even at all. And you're just supposed to, you're supposed to adapt it by osmosis or something.
Julie, it's so interesting. I mean, it's become such an embedded part of our culture that when we are looking to recruit and hire, we can tell even right away in the conversations that we're having with potential new unconsultants if they're going to be a fit or not. I've likened it recently to when there's maybe like a splinter. Like our culture is so seamless at this point, and we really know ourselves so well as an organization that if there is a foreign object that just doesn't seem like it's going to fit in, we can tell right away that it's not going to work. And I think it's because we talk about it as part of our recruiting. We talk about it as part of our onboarding. We talk about what those expected behaviors are and how we interact with each other. If you're following us on socials, we're talking about our values this week, so you can learn more about what it means when we demonstrate having integrity, caring about the greater good, and getting it done. So that's the baseline, Julie. That's just like our baseline for interactions. What we started in 2020 when I took over as CEO are these pillars that we focus on every year. So they're different every year. And I think we embed them so much into the culture that it just becomes part. So even though we're not doing the pillars aren't the same in 2020 as they are now in 2023, that became kind of part of who we were. And so we're just kind of adding those into our toolkit, I suppose, and how we interact with each other. So last year's, I felt, were really pivotal because we were able to create programming around the pillars, and we talked about them early, often, frequently. We have an internal team meeting every week on Thursdays, and somebody talked about how they were living the pillars every week. So last year,
that's impressive. That's really impressive.
It was fun. It was cool. And we learned a lot from each other. Last year it was health, environment, and mindset were the 3. And health includes mental health, of course. So talking about what we're doing to take care of ourselves, both physically and mentally. And I think when you talk about health, people, oh, I'm drinking more water, I'm going into the gym more, they're talking about those things to improve themselves. But what about the power of the pause was something that we learned about and talked about last year. What about when you have a stressful meeting, your body goes into fight or flight, and to give yourself, a few minutes after that meeting to just breathe and, activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you down and gets you out of fight or flight and gives you a moment to refocus. And
wow, I love that about the importance of the pause. Can you just elaborate on that? Because I think so often, certainly when I was working more in the corporate sector, you have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. You have like no time to even go to the restroom or even think. How do you even build that in? And I mean, that is such an important thing for good mental health.
It's unbelievable. So, I'm a yogi, and yoga has been a part of my life for a very long time. And in yoga, you learn how to, what they say, cultivate your breath. And it sounds, for some people, it sounds like hoo-hoo or whatever. But honestly, there is a scientific link between breathing and activating your vagus nerve. And what your vagus nerve does is it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which sends signals to your brain to calm down and to relax and to breathe. And so we had the great fortune of partnering with an organization called Sea Change. They came to our first ever offsite retreat in October. And we specifically asked them to come and speak to our entire team because this embodied our pillar of health, especially our mental health and well-being. And we learned from them about the power of the pause. So what they encouraged us to do is for every 50 minutes that we're on, take 10 minutes off. Now, sometimes it's easier said than done. Inspirant Group is a services company. So we need to be available for our clients when they need us. But as best we can, most of our internal meetings start 10 minutes after the hour. They don't end 10 minutes early, Julie, because you tend to run into that and keep going. So we've consciously had them start 10 minutes later. So whatever that buffer is between that last meeting and our meeting, you have that 10 minutes, and it's not to scroll through your social media. It's not
to stop and reset.
Go outside, get a breath of fresh air, lay on your bed and breathe for 10 minutes, whatever you need to do to reset, to calm your nervous system and to get ready for the rest of your day. And if there's scientific links, you can look it up about how that helps your clarity and your focus and your mood and, your engagement in your day.
I think that even if you don't always reach that goal, the fact that you have that embedded in your daily schedule for your team sends such an important message. Like, this is not BS. We really mean it.
We do. And we also, we've had this even before we had the great pleasure of learning from Sea Change. For years, we've had no meeting Friday. We do our best we can. Again, we have client meetings and sometimes we can't move those. But even with our clients, if they look to schedule something on Friday, we say, how are these days? And we really encourage the team not to schedule any internal meetings on Fridays. And that's just to hold that space. Granted, people are going to be catching up on email, but they also maybe can pause and think and get creative and think about new ways to attack some problems, or how we can better serve our clients, or a new product we could develop. Give them that creative time to not go from meeting to meeting to meeting, or checking their inbox, or all the things that, when you think about knowledge workers, you're hiring them for their intelligence and their thoughts and their ideas, and let's give them time to really do that instead of just checking through their checklist.
One of the things that has impressed me about Inspirant Group is how collaborative the culture is, how people really, truly seem to enjoy working together. But when you have mental health conversations with employees, which can sometimes be uncomfortable, how do you, as a leader, manage those conversations without kind of overstepping boundaries?
Gosh, navigating a pandemic together, really,
I guess that did prepare you a little bit more.
I think you really bond through that. And even the folks that have joined us after 2020, they also did go through the pandemic in their own way. So I think that, I think we're a lot more, is the word raw or open, or what is it? But I think we're more likely to be able to share what's going on. And so when we were navigating the pandemic together, we got on Zoom calls and we're like, how's everyone doing? How are you really doing? And some people were comfortable speaking up there, which was great because, and the leader should almost always go first in those situations to show that vulnerability, to say it's okay to say I'm not doing well. It's okay to not be okay.
And that you really want to hear, like, in my last full-time job, which I was in during the beginning of the pandemic, I had a manager who was told, I guess, she was a senior leader, but she was told to check in with her employees, and she did it in a very transactional way. So it was like, yeah, is everybody okay? Okay, on to the next thing. Like there was no breath or space even for people to really say how they were feeling. And there was still this feeling of fear if you, among the employees, if you were brave enough to say, I'm actually not feeling so great, right now. So I think when leaders show their own humanity and their own vulnerability, that is helpful.
I just think back to, earlier in my career where, I even heard in an onboarding that you should box up your personal life and leave it in your trunk on your way into the office. And I'm just
such a mistake.
I'm not a robot, I'm
No.
a human. And like, maybe I had a tough morning and I'm going to bring that with me into work. I'm going to do the best I can to not let it affect my day. But if I come in and something is going on personally, like, why can't I share that with you? Why can't I tell you that, my mom was in the ER last night and it was a late night and that was really stressful, and, I'm working through it, but I might not be 100% today. Why should I not share that?
And when leaders do share it, and I don't mean like overshare, to the point where it's like it never goes away. But when leaders do that, it actually opens up all the employees to feeling, I could really be myself here. I can really, and that allows people to do their best and bring their best self to work. And that is absolutely true.
You know what it comes down to, Julie, is this level of trust. I think that
Yeah.
is why Inspirant's culture is so strong as well, is that we trust each other. So I'll go back to the recruiting and hiring process. We're bringing on people that we trust to do the job that we're hiring them for. So, we don't have a time off policy. Like you take the time that you need, you work when and where and how you need to, because we trust you to get the job done. You understand our core values, you understand what it means to represent Inspirant Group and to operate as an unconsultant. So we're going to let you do that until you show us differently. We're going to let you operate in that way. And
Yeah.
so people, when you have that level of trust, then people feel comfortable saying, hey, Meg, this is happening in my life and this is what's going on. And I just want you to be aware of it. Like, I'm still showing up, doing my work, getting it done. But that also gives me the opportunity as a leader to say, wow, that seems like a lot. Like, could you use some help right now? Like, maybe you're not going to be able to deliver at 100% at this moment. And let's be smart about it. Maybe you do need to take some time off, or maybe you should only work in
Yeah.
the morning because in the afternoon you're feeling run down and you need to rest. Like, let's figure that out together. It's not forever, it's temporary, but let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice and not pretend that everything's fine and, put on this fake face and be a robot, because that's not who we are.
No, no. And I think, well, I'm a publicist, so I'm always thinking also, not only is this good for people, but it's really good for the story, for the internal and out-facing story about a company. It really, when mental health is kind of on the radar and you can talk about it in an intelligent, adult-like way, um, this acts as a recruitment tool. It's going to attract talent because people will want to be a part of it. And that gives you, so when you talk about how you address mental health and how you handle people in your within your company,
Mhm.
it really gives you something to write about, to talk about on social media, to tell the story with the news outlets.
Mhm.
Um, and how you do it is really a very significant part of your competitive advantage. And as you know, Meg, I mean, your Inspirant Group is winning awards for this. So that industry recognition really does, all of this together positions your company as an industry leader, and um, one that people want to work for and want to stay at.
Well, thank you, Julie. And a plug for you is you helped tell our story so well over the years. And we're so grateful. Many of these awards are because of the way you've helped tell
Well,
Inspirant's.
thank you. Thank you. So, you know what I wanted to ask you about, Meg, because I do remember last year there was a crisis, a local crisis at Highland Park. There was a terrible mass shooting. And
Yeah.
this really hit home in your company because it was, I think, what, the next town over where some of the employees live.
Yeah.
And in terms of mental health, how did you handle that? I mean, people were really shaken, and of course they should be. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how you were able to support team members after a crisis like that and checking in on their mental health.
I mean, I tell my two teenagers, I'm like, gosh, you guys are just living through crisis after crisis. And that's really what it's
Yeah.
felt like. Honestly, I think starting in 2020, but probably even before that, but it's just, became amplified in 2020 and since. And so, yeah, the Highland Park shooting, it was on the 4th of July. I'm sure many of you remember. It did hit close to home because we are in the Chicagoland area and we have folks in the Chicago suburbs. And you never know what 4th of July parade your team's going to end up at. Anyone could have been there. And so, I'm on a boat at my brother's lake house, and our people and culture lead, Aaron, is texting me, did you see what happened? And we just started calling everybody in Chicago, just calling or texting. Were you there? Are you okay? What's going on? So that was the first thing. Like, where's our team? Is everyone safe and okay? Once we were able to secure that, we, came up with a message, and we sent an email right away. We shared mental health resources in that email if they need some help, somebody to talk to, but also just continuing to reach out individually. Aaron reaches out regularly. I call people regularly just to check in and see how you're doing.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, whether or not, whether I work directly with them or not, if they're part of Inspirant Group, I'm concerned about how they're doing and how things are going on. And And I do think, again, it goes back to that trust and that relationship we've established, and me showing my own vulnerability where,
That
I
transparency.
call
Absolutely.
someone and they can
Absolutely.
say, you know what, Meg, yeah, that really impacted me. And gosh, I was with my kids at the parade over and I can't even believe it. And I can't stop thinking about the families, and to have that conversation and for them to feel open to be able to say, this is what's going on.
Lastly, how do you provide resources, mental health resources, for example, to um, employees who might need it? How to make suggestions or provide them with, I don't know, information?
A bunch of different ways. So, we have a handful of resources that we've cultivated from online. I mean, the CDC has a bunch of things.
Yeah,
We found a bunch of different options that people can go online if they don't want to reach out. But we also have recommendations of people that people can talk to. We had, gosh, one of our unconsultants had a pretty tragic family accident this past year. I mean, talk about crisis after crisis, right? So I called and spoke with this person personally and offered, to help provide counseling resources for this person and for their family if they needed it. Seeing the human first, take away all of the other things and really how can we best help that person in the moment. And I think it really makes a difference because, yes, we value them for their talent and for what they're providing for Inspirant Group as part of their career, but they have to be able to function as a human, as who they are,
sure.
before they can even begin to think about doing that. And so when you're going through crisis, getting them safe and secure and in a calmer mindset is really the priority. And then we can figure out everything else.
That's great. Well, Meg, as I thought, the time has gone by in a second. Thank you so much. This was such a valuable conversation for so many reasons. And thanks everyone for joining. And I'll see you next time on another episode of Julie's PR Patter.
Thanks, Julie. Take care.